Here's a question for you. Why are there so few sports-themed horror movies? I mean that as a genuine question, because sports are everywhere in film. We have sports dramas, sports comedies, family sports movies, sports action films, sports-themed rom-coms, even sci-fi sports. But sports-themed horror movies? Barely any. And no, Jason and Friday the 13th do not count as sports horror films.
Can someone tell me what's on his face?
Some kind of 20th century carbon filtration unit?
It's a hockey mask.
Very good, Centeron.
What's a hockey mask?
Facial armor, used in a sport outlawed in 2024.
And that's strange, because when you think about it, sports are perfect for horror. The themes are already there. The tension, the pain, obsession, endurance, and sacrifice are already baked into the culture. Honestly, a lot of the heavy lifting, no pun intended, has already been done. As a society, and really as a global culture, we love sports. Not everyone, of course, but sports culture is one of the most widespread, enduring social phenomena in the world.
So you're not good at sports. It's a very small part of life.
Sports. Bart rides up in the front seat today because he's a good guy at sports.
And it's easy to see why. Sports are exciting, they're communal, they're dramatic. For people who play them, sports offer exercise, discipline, teamwork, structure, and a sense of purpose. For the people who watch them, sports offer spectacle, ritual, and a shared language. Something easy to bond over with friends, family, or even strangers. Big events like the Olympics or the Super Bowl don't feel like games, they feel like cultural moments. And for the record, yes, I'm aware they're right around the corner, and I'm excited for both. But like anything else that's deeply loved, deeply normalized, or deeply protected, sports have a dark side. And that's exactly where horror thrives. As I've mentioned in previous videos, horror isn't just about jump scares or monsters. At its best, horror is about exploring the darker aspects of society, sometimes to expose uncomfortable truths, sometimes to process collective anxieties, and sometimes simply to take something beloved or sacred and ask, what happens if we look at this from another angle? Horror has no problem doing this with childhood, family, politics, beauty standards, capitalism, religion, but sports? That feels off limits. For a lot of people, criticizing sports culture doesn't feel like critique, it feels like blasphemy. And maybe that's part of the reason sports horror barely exists. A sports horror movie could start with one very simple question. Why do sports matter this much to us? Because when you strip it down, most sports don't really provide anything essential. Throwing a ball really far, skating faster than someone else, hitting another person harder, none of that really keeps the lights on, none of it grows food, none of it heals the sick. And yet we elevate athletes to near mythic status. We admire them for their physical perfection, their endurance, their willingness to push themselves past normal limits, often past healthy limits. They inspire us, they impress us, they give us hope that the human body and spirit can transcend its boundaries, so much so that we reward them with fame, wealth, and a kind of immortality. Statues, banners, retired numbers, Hall of Fame inductions. Meanwhile, the people who do provide essential services, the people who build, repair, clean, teach, care for, and feed society, are largely invisible. That contrast alone is unsettling, and horror loves unsettling questions. Before going any further, I want to be very clear about something. This is not an attack on sports or their fans. That would make me a massive hypocrite. I am a huge hockey fan. I've practiced martial arts, I've even worked on the entertainment side of sports. So when I talk about the darker implications of sports culture, it's not coming from a place of hate or moral superiority. It's coming from curiosity, and from someone who really, really, really loves movies and the way genres can interrogate the world around us. Everyone got that? Okay, good. Moving on. Here's the thing. Sports don't need horror added to them, they already contain it. Sports normalize physical injury, chronic pain, bodily sacrifice, emotional exploitation, and long-term damage in exchange for short-term glory. They follow strict diets and nutritional regimens that would shock the average person's system. They train for hours on end, often while depriving themselves of sleep, recovery time, and other basic needs. They push their body to near inhuman levels of endurance, routinely operating beyond what should be considered safe or sustainable. And that's before we even get to the substances. Performance enhancers, painkillers, stimulants, things people should not be ingesting long-term, are normalized in the name of competition. All of this is framed as dedication, as discipline, as something admirable. Playing through the pain is considered heroic. Permanent injuries are brushed off as part of the game. Athletes are encouraged to push past warning signs that their body is screaming at them. That's not far removed from body horror.
No pain, no gain.
Concussions, CTE, steroid abuse, addiction, careers that peak before adulthood and collapse before middle age. The horror isn't fictional, it's just framed as acceptable. You don't need demons, you don't need curses, you don't even need supernatural elements. The systems themselves are enough. A true sports horror film wouldn't just be scary, it would be uncomfortable. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. Football players subject themselves to constant high-impact collisions, knowingly risking long-term brain damage through repeated concussions. Hockey players slam into each other at high speeds, engage in ritualized fistfights, and do their jobs with knives strapped to their feet and blunt weapons in their hands. Baseball has been plagued by steroid abuse, with players injecting dangerous enhancement drugs that jeopardize their health, and in some cases, their lives. Boxing and MMA? I feel like that one speaks for itself. These aren't hypothetical dangers. These are real, documented consequences, and yet they're normalized because they're entertaining. That alone feels like something horror should be all over. And the horror doesn't stop at the physical. There are emotional and sociological horrors embedded in sports culture as well. Sports like golf or tennis are deeply tied to classism and elitism, access-based systems that quietly reinforce who belongs and who doesn't. Soccer exists on a global scale, with players carrying the weight of entire nations on their shoulders. Millions, sometimes billions, of eyes watching every move, every mistake. Athletes aren't just players, they're commodities, symbols, and investments. And then there's the fans.
Sit down before you get hurt! Motherfucker!
Go! What you got?
God damn it.
Some fans don't just enjoy sports, they build their identities around them. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with being passionate. I'm a fan myself, but there's a line between enthusiasm and obsession, and some fans sprint way past it. It's one thing to be disappointed when your team loses. It's another thing entirely to scream at referees, pick fights with strangers, vandalize property, or riot in the streets because a game didn't go your way. It leaves you asking, why? Why does this matter so much? Local pride is fine, community is healthy, and friendly rivalries can be fun. But for some people, sports becomes something closer to religion, or worse, an excuse to justify violent, irrational behavior. And that intensity doesn't start in adulthood, it often begins in childhood. Now again, youth sports can be a great thing. They teach teamwork, discipline, physical health, and social skills. They can open doors to scholarships and academic opportunities. But like everything else in sports culture, there is a darker side. Some kids are pushed into sports they don't enjoy or never wanted because of parental pressure. Others train to unhealthy extremes, their bodies overworked, their identities narrowed to performance alone. And sometimes, parents project their own unrealized dreams or insecurities onto their children, turning games into obligations and mistakes into failures. And kids who aren't athletically inclined, they're often ridiculed by peers, by classmates, and sometimes even by adults.
Can't win a game with her on the team.
Again, youth sports have a lot of positive qualities, but pretending there's no dark side is dishonest. And that said dark side, pressure, shame, exploitation, identity loss, is absolutely something horror could explore.
Okay, son. Just remember to have fun out there today. And if you lose, I'll kill you!
And beyond themes and symbolism, I can think of so many genuinely great things you could do with sports horror on a purely cinematic level. Picture a gory, Cronenberg-style body horror film about a baseball player using untested performance-enhancing drugs. At first it works. He's stronger, faster, unstoppable. But the more he relies on it, the more his body mutates, warps, and deteriorates into something barely human. What about a teen horror film centered around a football team led by a psychotic coach? Sports movies already love the overly competitive coach as a villain trope, so just take it one step further. A coach so obsessed with winning that he's willing to cross moral, legal, and eventually homicidal lines to secure a championship. And then there's golf. Imagine a golf-themed horror drama shot like a David Lynch nightmare. Pristine green courses, perfectly manicured landscapes, hiding histories of elitism, exclusion, exploitation, and rot beneath the surface. David Lynch used picturesque Americana to expose something deeply unsettling underneath. And honestly, that's golf in a nutshell. How about an MMA film where fighters battle monsters, demons, or other supernatural entities in ritualized fights to the death?
Welcome!
Okay, yeah, that's basically just Mortal Kombat, but, well, you get the idea. The point is, these concepts aren't thin. They're not gimmicks. They're fertile, they're cinematic, and they tap directly into fears and anxieties that already exist in sports culture. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to highlight one recent film that actually is a sports horror movie, 2025's Him. The movie follows an up-and-coming quarterback being mentored by a legendary player who may be nearing the end of his career. And while Him isn't perfect, it's a very hit-and-miss movie, it's far from a failure. It digs into the obsessive nature of athletics, familial guilt, sacrificing your health and body for the game, the pressures of fame, and the expectation to keep pushing yourself long after your body is begging you to stop. In other words, a lot of the exact themes we've been talking about here. It also does feature a memorably unhinged performance from Marlon Wayans.
This ain't no game! This ain't a game, man. This is everything.
Him may not fully unlock the potential of sports horror film, but it's an encouraging step in the right direction. Proof that there's real ground here to explore and that filmmakers are starting to notice. And honestly, I hope that's just the beginning.
And show me.
And now we come to the end of the video. This is a topic that's been weighing on me for a little while, and it was actually kind of fun to share my thoughts. Sports horror is a strangely underexplored corner of the genre, especially considering how much pain, obsession, sacrifice, and identity are already built into the world of athletics. The horror is there, we've just barely scratched the surface. Hopefully, more filmmakers are willing to step onto that field. Alright, thanks for watching everybody. Be sure to like and comment on this video, let us know of some sports-themed horror films you'd like to see, and subscribe to the channel for more horror content from Cascadia Dread. See you next time.